My name is Nate Kells from the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum. And today we have with us Mackenzie Knight-Fochs from Friends of Laurel Hill and West Laurel Hill Cemetery. I had to put the whole thing in the slide because I kept just saying West Laurel Hill Cemetery, so I wanted to...
Thank you.
Yes, and then Richard Doran, of course, our APJ Marketing Communications Manager and our liaison.
Hello, everyone.
So throughout the course of this town hall, if you have a question, you can put it in the Q&A. Mackenzie will be monitoring those. If you have, or you can also raise your hand and then we will call on you during, as soon as, sorry, a little pop-up came up. So we can call on you if you have a question or something to add. Again, this is very open, it's very fluid. If you have any information you want to share, or what we're really trying to do is just help everyone get to the point now. I mean, some places are starting to reopen. So what we want to do is just as a group, help each other out, share as much as we can. And I will go now to the public reopening plan summary. And Pamela from APGA, if you would, do we have her on? I think she dropped off.
Yes, hi.
She's there.
All right, Pamela, if you wanted to start.
Sure, thanks, Nate. So I'm Pam Allen Stein. My typical day job is managing the Plant Collections Network program for the association, but I have had a detail for the past week and a half to head up a task force on helping gardens with their reopening plans. And what we're excited to just launch as of hours ago is a tool that you can use, a template that will help you pull together a public reopening plan summary. So that's as opposed to your bigger detailed internal document for operations planning. This one is meant to be for an external audience. If your state or your local jurisdiction is requiring a plan to be submitted for pre-approval before they will greenlight your reopening, you can use it for that. Some are also using it as their public-facing summary, whether they post it on their website or in a blog. So the template is designed for you to download any or all parts of it, and the key is to revise it. You need to customize it based on your own state or local jurisdiction's criteria, and also your garden's capacity for the different aspects that you're going to be covering. But they're really looking, in this document, they're looking for adherence to compliance guidance that's been provided. So that's kind of the focus, and knowing that that's the audience, you want to hit the key points that they're looking for. The internal documents, we're also starting to upload information that will be helpful for you formulating those plans, as well as working through getting permissions to post a few sample plans as well that you can look at and think about. There might be some details that you might like for your own plan. So here's what it looks like on the screen. It clarifies its purpose to distinguish between an internal and an external use, provides little instructions, which is basically what I just said, and then you insert accordingly. It gives the overall premise that this is going to be a phased process. It focuses on phase one with the most details, and pulls these different points. Occasionally, a point may have optional alternate text that might be more applicable to your garden or your state's requirements. And so you can download any of these sections and mix and match and revise accordingly. We're really interested in getting your feedback. This is meant to be a living document. this is straight out of the gate, and we rushed it to you because we know, as you said, gardens are starting to reopen and states are starting to reopen. So if there are things that we can do better, right at the top of the page is a request to send it to any feedback to info@publicgardens.org, and that will help for any subsequent versions.
Pam, if I can just jump in, and if anyone's looking for this, we will have it on our COVID related resources page shortly. It really is a just released document for us. I have uploaded this into the community forum library, so if you want it sooner, you can go there right now and pick it up, and it will be available for you. Otherwise, it'll be available probably later on this evening and definitely tomorrow in the Library and Media Center, and also on our COVID related resources.
All right, perfect. I wanted to say too that, where am I at now? That this is a huge, huge reason why we're here. So I definitely appreciate that that you put it together. I'm going to reshare my screen. I know that especially because the Arboretum, the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum, we just did a reopen phase 1. And there's so many other things to think about that this, even just from scanning the document, it's a great place to start. And I think that by taking pieces of it or using the full thing, it's huge. It's exactly what we need. So thank you for putting that together. Mackenzie, do you want to?
Yeah, so moving right along, I want to say thank you to Sean and Kathleen from Acme Technologies for being with us today. They are going to be able to provide kind of an industry overarching view of the discussions along the lines of what Nate has kind of alluded to, what the association has, a lot of the discussions that have been happening about timed ticketing and how do you interact and interface with your visitors going forward, and what are those options and some best practices, I think. So they have some information to share generally, and then we'll be opening up for Q&A and everything else for the rest of the time. So I'm going to turn it right over to them. They do work with Huntington Botanical Garden, Morton Arboretum, and Frederick Meyer Botanical Garden, and I think South Coast, is that right? South Coast, yep. So they work with several garden members, and there may be people on this call from those gardens as well. So Sean and Kathleen, take it away. And I believe, Sean, you've got I think you can share your screen with your PowerPoint slides.
Yeah.
Should be able to.
Okay. Everyone should see my screen now.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So my name's Sean. What I wanted to do is just to again, just kind of dive into today's conversation to make sure that we're doing everything that we have to keep everything as relevant as we can. Just by way of introductions, my name's Sean, Vice President for Acme Ticketing here. I've been around for about 5 years or so. This is not a pitch, so I'm just going to stop there. But we work with institutions across the entire nonprofit space. So we're working with not only gardens, arboretums, historical homes, zoos, aquariums, a few attractions, fine art museums, etc. So they're all embarking on this new normal. Let's hope it's temporary, in different ways. And we're so. What I also brought with us is Kathleen Halal. She's one of my colleagues, and she's really responsible for working with our existing customer base and helping them engineer best practices, leveraging technology to bring us into what this reopen phase, whether it's be from training, it might be from things such as what's the best practice that it's going to be. I just saw a thing to move louder, so I'll move my microphone closer to my face. Hopefully that works. And we wanted to be able to make sure that we're being as objective yet pragmatic about this as possible. And so we put together a list of kind of the top things that we see. I've got 2 pages of them, so a lot of content. And what we wanted to do is again move into being able to share these with you and kind of what we wanted to go from that perspective. And so I was going to have Kathleen walk you through, and by all means interject your questions with what we're seeing across the industry is doing today, from managing flow and has been forcing paperless entry. Obviously, time ticketing is a big piece of it. Contactless operational challenges that we're seeing that we wanted to share with you, and then retraining of staff as well. So by all means, inject the questions into the chat feature. We'll be monitoring quickly. But Kathleen, if you want to just kind of share what we're seeing so far.
Sure, thanks. Hi, everyone. As Sean mentioned, I work with all of our existing customers across all types of cultural institutions. And I have been talking about reopening every day, all day for the past several weeks. And these are certainly the hottest topics within reopening plans that we're talking about all the time. The first one being timed entry ticketing. Although some venues were already doing this, we are seeing that a majority of our customers were just doing a general admission entry and are now switching to the timed entry to control the crowd and to have a little more predictability on who will be arriving and at what time. So this is probably the biggest operational change that we're seeing. And a lot of this isn't really limited to the technology that allows the time ticketing, but also just the general crowd management. What is the arrival experience like, and where do people go once they enter the grounds? So understanding, what that workflow is, and in conjunction with time ticketing, we're also hearing a lot of, we're really trying to drive people to buy their tickets in advance online so that when they arrive, they already have a ticket and there's no need to transact at the point of sale. That's a big thing to, again, trying to be more contactless and limit those touch points that you had before, with credit cards and receipts and materials. So by enabling an online workflow and having people buy their tickets in advance, you're able to reduce a lot of that. And then also the scenario we're hearing a lot is, well, what if people, and maybe it's members, maybe it's just general admission guests, but they just show up and they don't have a ticket. What will we do? Will you have a point of sale open to allow for a walk-up transaction if needed? So if that is the case, contactless payment is coming up more and more. Having a device that allows you to do a contactless, like Apple Pay payment, so that you don't even have to touch the credit card. You have the device in front of the guests and they can just self-serve with the payment transaction processing. So I'd say those are top topics here. I'll pause to see if there's questions about any details on any of that. I'm sure you all have been talking about these already.
Yes.
Yeah, well, Kathleen, one question just came up. Are the issues of exclusion if a garden does not offer cash transactions?
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, what specifically is?
Yeah, so are there any issues of exclusion if a garden does not offer cash transactions? Have we seen any or heard anything about that so far? We take away cash.
I haven't heard anything directly, although I think there's been a general trend where most payments are by credit card. But if there is a cash option that will still be available, I think that's another consideration. If you do keep a specific point of sale terminal, how will you maintain that terminal? How will you, what will your policies be for accepting the cash, having gloves and things like that? That one probably hasn't come up as much, but I think for the institutions that do have a high volume or percentage of cash sales, it's a big question there, whether you'll still enable that or offer it. Maybe you don't lead with it, but if somebody offers to pay in cash, are you going to be able to accept it? And then on the paperless front, I think most of the customers we've been talking to, even before closures, were already moving in the direction of paperless, with only printing receipts on demand, or if you have the capability to send an email receipt. Again, driving people towards the advanced ticket sales does allow for that receipt process to be a non-issue at the point of sale, because they already received their receipt and their tickets in advance. For institutions with a high membership base, digital membership cards is certainly something that everyone's been talking about for many, many years, but now should it be a bigger priority so that members don't have to pull out their membership card, hand it to a staff person to verify. So a digital membership card could become more used across the industry as those solutions are pursued. But anything that, again, reduces what you are what you're passing back and forth with your guests, so that when they come, you can just greet them, verify their ticket in some way and let them in. And we don't have to worry about, additional touch points.
Kathleen, one question just came in on that note. What about gardens that are free? If they don't have a ticket booth and they're considering timed entries for some of their busier days, are we seeing gardens that are free?
I mean, you can still issue tickets that are $0. But the important thing is, and maybe the terminology should be clarified too, like using the term, it's a reservation for the time slot you're committing to visit. Might not cost anything, but you need to have a reservation in advance to facilitate your experience when you arrive. I think the shift there for, encouraging your guests to plan ahead, and that way when they do arrive, they have a safer experience. You are ready for them, they're coming, and you put a cap on how many people will be visiting at that same time in that time slot. And I think that will help reassure some confidence that, it is okay and it is safe to come visit, because these measures have been put into place.
Mm-hmm. What about gardens that, do we have any exposure, or any of our clients that we're working with or in the industry that we're seeing that are running timed entry admission? They also have maybe other than a nursery or another business that's attached to them. Have we had to do any associated admission programs?
I think this came up when I was working with Morton, but I'll have to double check. But I think it depends on whether access to that area of the grounds needs to be ticketed separately, or if it's included with your initial ticket. I think those are the two ways you can approach it. And if you already have an admission entry and that opens up access to that area, then you're fine. But if you have a different capacity control in the secondary area, whether it's a nursery or a shop or some other part of the grounds, that could be ticketed separately. And as long as the person has reserved that ticket in advance, they can access during that time window.
That's great. How are we seeing when we have institutions we're working with and they're getting their reopening plans together, maybe they've already opened or not, but how do they announce that it's only going to be tickets purchased or reserved in advance? And did they sell out quickly? And what was the best method? Is maybe what are a couple of things that didn't work?
Yeah, I think as everyone is still planning to reopen, like as far as our customer base is, we only have a few that are open already. I think we saw one case where they did kind of a slow, soft opening, and they reopened first for members and then to the general public. That was one approach I saw. Another is just leading up to when you're going to reopen, you can start communicating these concepts to your guests and membership base. Even if you don't know the date yet, you can say changes are coming. Here are some things we're thinking. But it is going to be a big change. But I think that a lot of people are expecting change anyway. So some of our customers are using this in a way as an opportunity to just make a lot of operational changes at once. So in addition to timed entry and the operations and the workflow and arrival and requiring people to purchase in advance, if you're going to do all that, do it all at once. And it's just one major communication to everyone. And then, over time, it becomes the norm, or you'll adjust as you find out what the demand for tickets is and which time slots are selling out faster than others.
Mm-hmm.
Can I interject just a second?
Mm-hmm.
I'm Nate from the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum, and we opened on Friday of last week we have a 3-mile drive. So we kind of did exactly what you said. Like, we started, at first we were going to do 500 cars in the morning, 500 cars at night. And then I had a conversation with our reservations manager, and she was hesitant. I was hesitant because we wanted to manage expectations. So we dropped that to 75 cars an hour, which was almost half of what we were looking to do. And I think that was the best thing we could have done, just to manage the expectation. Some people were upset because they didn't get a ticket, which we were flooded with. So everyone on here, people are ready to come back to your gardens, that's for sure. But I think by doing that, we were able to manage expectations. The staff knew what they were supposed to do. We saw where the flaws were and the things that we didn't figure out. Last time we had discussed restrooms. If restrooms were going to be open or closed or whatever, well, we found out from the state that the restroom has to be open if we're open, even if we're just letting them drive through. So communicating that it was for emergency use only, the communication portion of it, and Susie Hopper from our PR department is on here too, but the communication was very tricky because members still thought, even though they were getting a timed reservation for, 9 a.m., whatever, they thought that they didn't need it. So they showed up, and our policy was that we just said no. We just said, you know what, this is all we can handle right now. We're trying to ease into this. Some of them were, I think there was 6 dozen, about 70 some the first day. And they were fairly okay with it. They just thought, well, you're trying to keep us safe. So yeah, I think that's exactly what needs to happen, is start really slow, because as much as people want to come out there, if it's not a good experience and you have to shut down, yeah. But our time tickets have worked extremely well. I don't even work planning on having it through the summer, just because we don't know what's going to happen. And even when we reopen the buildings, so. That's all I had to interject. Sorry.
No, it's good. I think, starting conservatively is the best approach. And I imagine everyone will just, at the end of the day, like, what worked well today? What do we need to adjust for tomorrow? You might find you have to adjust capacity, or you need to, clarify some more communication, put some more signage. I mean, all of us, I don't think anyone really knows what they'll need to do in those areas until you open and you just take it day by day.
Do you have any ideas on how do you determine how many people to let in? That was our biggest issue. Like the directors council just said 1,000 cars. And so then, but we started to do the math and we're like, I don't think that can work, but is there like, car? Right, exactly. Well, they can't get out. So it was one car it could be. We also changed our ticketing policy. So if you purchased just to do around the drive, it was $15 per car. So it didn't matter how many people were in it. And then when we go to phase 2, when they can get out of their cars and walk the grounds and the building still won't be open, then it'll be $15 per person. So I mean, I think people are accepting of the phases because they know that the transition is going to be difficult. But I think one of our biggest issues was figuring out how many people do let in and what that capacity is. And I know that it'll be different for each garden, but do you have any metrics or any idea on how that could be? Because I'm sure a lot of people, if they do time tickets, will need to figure out how many they can let through.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of evaluating how long does your average visitor stay, and what is the physical layout of the point of entry, right? So after they park their car and they come in where they normally get tickets, like, is it spacious? Is there a way to direct the traffic flow so that people aren't so close together? If you have a parking lot constraint, how many cars can you handle, first of all? And then if that parking lot is full and every car is full, like, can you accommodate that many people at a time? Because I think what you want to make sure, if you're going timed entry, you don't want anyone to be hanging around waiting for their time slot if they arrive early. So things like allowing people to rebook into a different time slot could come up. So if you aren't fully sold out for every time slot and someone arrives early, they have a ticket for later, will you let them in as long as there's capacity? Because if you do, that releases the capacity for the later time slot for someone else to purchase into. So those types of scenarios that just need to be flexible so that you can adjust according to the day of the week or the time of day and how high the demand is. Actually, I see a question in the Q&A that might tie into this for members that maybe book in advance, but they don't show up because it's free. A very good point. I think some institutions are looking at, again, creating 2 admission events, one for members only and one for non-members, and then just adjusting capacity according to what percentage of your visitors are members or not. So I am hearing a lot of, I want to reserve some capacity for members on one hand, And at the same time, I'm hearing, I want to limit how many members can take up a time slot because we need to recover some revenue, right? So I want to make sure paid tickets can get in, but we can't, we have to be careful about how we message that. So understanding what those caps should be, and if it is to be segmented by audience, those are things that, might just need to be evaluated. You could look at past data if you have data from your existing system to see what the trends have been in the past year before you closed, and just use that as a starting point for, capacity guidelines.
Susie, are you on?
I am.
So Susie is our PR manager at the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum. And do you want to discuss how we kind of rolled out the communication, although we were part of the University of Minnesota, so it was a little bit different, but do you kind of want to walk people through how that worked?
Sure. Because if the U of M had not been engaged, I think the process would still pretty much be the same. We made the final decision, and I know you guys will gulp when you hear this.
But be prepared.
Yeah, to open last Friday on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
So, in many ways, we were already ready for that. We had, on the website, we had the language up. We had already put together all the ticketing information and that sort of thing. But I then had to get this out through social media and to media. And we also had to, push it out to members. So
I kind of want to add to Susie that,
yes.
So Susie was extremely, she really wanted to push it out to members first. And that was kind of the goal. And I, of course, as membership manager, supported that 100%, but it got a little tricky because it was so last minute. We were able to announce it in the morning email just before, Facebook went out and the media releases went out. But I'm thinking if you can do the 2 or 3 days before, if at all possible, to members. Susie, would that be kind of a timeline? I know that revenue is important, but people are also holding back renewals right now. So
Right.
We saw a spike of when we released to the members, $22,000 came in renewals in the first hour and a half. So
Yes.
it's almost like they were waiting. So it's like, do you do $15 a car, which we did make 7,500 or whatever from revenue from non-members paying the car entry fee, or do you appease the members that have been waiting for you to reopen, and that revenue is much more? So it's kind of this tricky balance, and Susie had a great plan, but like she said, we had from Thursday to Friday.
Right. And I would really, for I think any of the gardens and the organizations that are largely member based, and we are, even though we have a tremendous number of visitors per year, I would really, the optics of getting it to members first matters. I feel really strongly about that. And we've spent several days now, I think every day since Thursday, basically having to assuage a lot of members that they were given first shot at this.
Right.
The perception has to be there. I think the reality has to be there. And because we did this so quickly, we could only give them a head start in this race. We couldn't let them finish the track first.
Right.
And I would say that you spend so much time on Facebook, Instagram with your membership people, with your front desk, your guest visitor managers answering that question, and why weren't we, that I really felt strongly about it. So did Nate, but we just were not able to win that battle because we are so behind in the revenue game.
Mhm.
And so our director just said, it's a good idea, but we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And so that is kind of how it rolled out. I would not recommend that. I think, ultimately we're paying a bit of a price for it. And one of the prices is this: we're not fully staffed, and we're having to take a tremendous amount of time to deal with people who are unhappy.
Mhm.
And that takes time too. And so from how are we managing the number of hours that we're giving people? We can't use any volunteers right now, so it's staff, and we were clearly overwhelmed, as I'm sure Nate will tell you. We had 500 reservations in the first hour that we put this out. And we were, as of yesterday, full through the 12th of May. So we went back and we had a bigger discussion about capacity and could we add more. And also, given that 20 to 25% of the members who were being given free access were not fulfilling their slot. So we have pumped it up now twice. But, if I had my druthers, I would start with members.
Mhm. And we're also having conversations too now about like reopening for phase 2 walkers on our 3-mile walk. And so maybe that's something that tickets are only available to members. They have to buy a reservation or a time ticket at $0. And, so we're still just trying to figure this out. So I'll put all of our information that we have in the library on the forum, because I know that I've gotten some feedback about that. And I think, I think just whatever we can do to help each other out. Like Susie said, we did what we could with what we had. And hopefully if you are reopening and you don't have to do it the same way we did, that would be great, but you just never know.
Well, one thing I would say, even given that last minute push, we had incredible media coverage for our opening, people blasting it out there Thursday, Friday, covering it, showing up, wanting to do follow-ups on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So we had incredible help in getting the message out. And we did no advertising.
Partially because we cut the budget.
Well, also really, Nate, the university felt the optics of putting advertising out there at a time when everyone is struggling so mightily that it didn't look good.
Yeah.
And that because we actually did have some options within this with existing advertising, and they really felt, don't do it.
Right. Managing expectations. Well, Sean and Kathleen, do you have, we kind of took over a little bit, but do you have
sorry
to add, or is it going well?
We wanted
that you have?
So we have the luxury of obviously working in the garden space and outside of the garden space, and being able to see, having this vantage from many different lenses is really incredibly helpful. And the question always comes up, like, I've never had a track capacity before, and I need to start doing that now, right? And it really comes down to worst case scenario at your choke point and being able to manage the flow there. That's the starting point. And so what we're seeing institutions kind of settling down to is roughly about 30% of what they would normally do, and then pivot from there, make those adjustments as they continue to collect more data. The reality is a lot of places have never tracked capacity, whether they're free or they're not busy. They're, 50% of your volume might be during the holiday season, so it's not something you really had to contend with. And so that's one thing that we're seeing that comes up a lot. And the other item that comes with it is, someone put in one of the questions, is the ability for add-ons. And making your general admission, so taking your example of allowing cars to go in for their piece, but continue to allow cars and then have the add-on component of, you can have cars and you can have the walking of the rosebud garden or something to that effect, right? To be able to still control the flow to those places as you evolve it, as you gather data. It's very easy to turn off that programming, to turn off that ticket restraints, turn off that capacity control. It's very hard to start it after you've already been going, when you set the expectation, people have had that experience and they're out there, using it. So we're seeing a lot of that. And we're seeing a lot of institutions that are doing, as we've been hearing so far, starting off with members only days, right? So, hey, the state has allowed us to open up on, let's say it's the 1st. So the 1st through the 4th is members only. And then after that, having members-only events maybe in the mornings or the evenings, but having those time slots, making them public, because that drives membership, right? And we want to be able to make those things available for those folks, but you still want to let the general public in because they need to get out of the house too, right? And we're the first real segment of our economy that's really going to be able to open up for the masses for this. So those are just some, some data points that we're seeing. Another question that came up is the software systems that people are using for online time ticketing. Obviously, that's what we do, right? So I won't move that into a plug, so I'll move on. But what it is that you want to be able to identify something that has flexibility, right? That you can control the inventory on time blocks that work for you and your organization. What I mean by that is, you want to be able to control capacity at a moment's notice at different channels. So whether it's online, whether it's at walk-up, whether it's marketing communications, et cetera. And then you want to be able to adjust that, let them in early, let them in late. And then you want to be able to cancel those or reschedule, rebook them, right? So those are things that, as you're out there evaluating, that are part of this, because time ticketing, while it's been around for a long time, has never had the demand that we're seeing today. So there's just a few things to kind of do keep in mind as you're looking outward.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you guys coming to talk to us. Sean, if you could send me your contact info, and then if anyone is interested, I'll send an e-blast out today if they have more questions. If they don't currently have a time ticketing software in place, then maybe they could reach out to you too. But I appreciate it because it's a newer thing. So I appreciate you coming to talk to us. Thank you too, Kathleen.
You're welcome.
All right. Have a good day.
Thank you.
All right, thanks so much.
All right. So we have in the chat, in the question and answer, Melissa wrote, as an FYI for folks, we published that we would extend the membership expiration dates for all those who joined or renewed while we were closed to 12 months beyond our reopen date. So they would not lose anything while we were closed. That's a great idea, because I think a lot of people are holding out to see, and we even have the conversation now, because when members were asking for extensions, we said, well, we will extend your membership based on the amount of time that we're closed. And, thinking about, okay, well, we reopened 3 Mile Drive, but does that technically mean we're open? I don't know. So are we going to extend it for 2 months, or are we going to wait until we're fully open and extend it for 3? So I think that's a great idea to just get the renewals in and the sales and then extend it based on. And I wonder if you would send out new cards though. I'm not sure if you guys sent out new cards, Melissa, but let's see. What time ticket software are people using or considering? Pros and cons. Oh, Info at Public Garden wants to answer that.
I think that I'm pretty sure that Altru has the time ticketing capabilities. That's what you guys have, Nate, right?
Yep, yep.
So you guys are building that out. Obviously, Acme is got that capability. But I appreciate what Sean said about, knowing what works best for you and also obviously it has to scale with budget. So what realistically can you do? And I know I don't know what smaller gardens are doing. Richard, do you have thoughts on that or ideas?
Don't have a lot. That's a lot of things, as everybody's looking to re-up. It is something that we're probably going to include in our next survey. We did one in March and another one in April, so there is room for one in May at this point. And I think, I don't know if Pam is still here, if she has any insight into that or what we may have heard from other places in terms of how many small gardens are dealing with that problem.
Yeah.
Sorry, this was related to about extending memberships. I'm looking at the questions. Sorry.
It's okay. That was regarding how do you which time ticketing systems what gardens are using right now.
Right. I actually don't have any insights on that one. That is something that we're finding out more information about. The only thing that's related to that I do know is of a garden that just opened last Friday is that they found that surge in memberships that Nate mentioned as something that interrupted even their ability to process the timed tickets, because they had this backlog of new and renewing memberships. And it makes sense. Once they're open, then there would be that uptick because people are thinking, okay, well, now I get to go, and that's part of my membership benefit. But as far as what the systems were, pros and cons, I think Joan had mentioned that she was doing some information digging on a couple of the different possibilities and with the ones that were mentioned already.
Hi, and apart from Altru and the Acme, we haven't had any specific systems. I will say that the only feedback I have gotten is there is scaled capacity for what to use. And right now, I think organizations are just looking inward to see what systems they have, what they can do. A lot of them are just using the events time for timed events, blockbusters, things like that. And now they've had to think about how to adapt it to admissions.
When I know for Altru too, we went through, a year and a half of, resourcing software and seeing, and then we've implemented in November. So I think Altru, if you don't already have it, is out, but it's nice that this seems like it could be something that you could add on and learn fairly quickly and then implement right away.
Another question in the Q&A is, and I know this was a topic on a membership call that was done by the Philadelphia area museums recently, but discussion about extending the memberships. What do you think about in terms of the potential future gaps in revenue that's coming in as you are giving people extra time on memberships?
Well, from the Minnesota Landscape Arboretum standpoint, I had that discussion right away because I knew that it would probably be coming. We have 29,000 member households, and our CFO was kind of jaw dropped. Like, we cannot do this, especially this close to the end of the fiscal year. And if we bump them into next fiscal year, what does that do? So we've really been, we have I looked this morning, 123 members that have asked if we were going to consider an extension. We've had a couple refunds and those were mainly because people, signed up, and then all of a sudden both their, the two living in the household lost their job and really needed any money they could get. So we've been fairly liberal with doing the refunds, and the extension. But for now, we just created an Excel document in Google Docs, and my team goes in and puts information. And when we reopen, then we'll do the extension. I think if it was, if we were closed for any longer, we might have bigger issues, but as of right now, it's okay.
So if any of our attendees would like to raise their hand and have anything to add, we're certainly welcome to have your comments and thoughts on what's going on.
Yeah, and also Sean and Kathleen are just kind of hanging around and on mute. I told them they could jump in if they hear a question that they have something that would be used, like they have a good answer to, because I feel like their perspective is very helpful, especially considering it's not just gardens, and we're all in this together. So.
So in Q&A, there's also Beverly asked, what are other gardens doing regarding their gift shops?
I know I can speak to this, and perhaps if anyone else has that. I see we have a couple hands raised. I know I run our gift shop at the cemetery. We are grateful to have an online version. So I've been really focusing on that. However, I know not everybody has that capability. So I've actually just thinking now of, can we do a mobile option where we offer an open air kind of thing? I don't know for gardens how feasible that is either. But that's kind of where I need to be focusing my efforts now, thinking about, okay, if people can't come into a physical space because it's limited, what do we, and we don't want people like touching lots of things. What is that like? Can we hand them a sheet that they order off of, or that kind of thing? So that's kind of where I'm at with the gift shop piece of it. And I'm happy to have further discussions along those lines too. And then,
did you have a fairly robust online presence with the gift shop before COVID, or because we have a great gift shop, but we had no real online presence.
yeah.
And so the discussion is, okay, now is the time to start that,
on.
you know, but then also how do you, is it curbside pickup? Is it, it's just.
Yeah, so we've been having really good response putting our online store out there. I need to update the look of it. We've had an online store for a long time because I think that's what we actually first used for ticketing for events. And then it's now just like an e-commerce platform. I use BigCommerce. It's quite robust and does really well and very easy to use. And it's got some good analytics on it for the cursory use I have. We've done more online sales since this has all started than we've done ever before. It's still only in the hundreds of dollars, but like for a small organization, I feel really good about that, because that's we wouldn't have any revenue from our gift shop otherwise. So I've also been doing free shipping with orders of a minimum of $20 through Mother's Day. I started that on the 20th of April. So thinking about those, but it is a different kind of mindset of like, okay, physical commerce versus e-commerce. It's two different skill sets. So, similar skill sets, but differently used. So I've noticed that if I put it out in front of people and remind them that we have an online store, it gets sales, or at least we get traffic going to it. But that's also possibly because no one's Googling cemetery gift shops.
And I think too, even if you don't have an online presence, the push for supporting local is huge. My husband and I, we've been buying gift cards to local restaurants because we know that we will use them when we reopen, but maybe even just pushing gift cards or gift certificates or something that will get them in after. And maybe it's you buy a gift certificate for $100, and when we reopen, you get a free tchotchke or something when you come to visit. Like, I think everyone's looking to support. I don't think this is like the 2008 bubble where, a lot of people are, yes, some people are losing jobs, but I think there's assistance that's coming up with this round also. So I don't know if money is as tight as it was before. People are still spending. There's still, so you just have to get out there and figure out how to get it.
Yep. And I'm trying to unmute Melissa Sunbury because we've got 2 raised hands and I want to turn it over to her. And then Melissa, I don't know if you can unmute yourself.
Y'all just unmuted me.
Okay, great.
So I live in the wild, wild west of South Carolina.
This is Lauren.
Yeah, from Brook Green Gardens. So we never closed the exterior of our gardens, the outside spaces. We were able to stay open, but we did reopen the gift shop last week. And we've basically done what they've been doing at grocery stores. You know, we have marks on the ground where you have to stand 6 feet away. We're only allowing one-way flow through the gift shop. We can only have 10 people in the shop at any one time. And then this week, we also have art galleries. They had been closed and we reopened them this week with the same type of thing. One way in, one way out, social distancing. We're asking people to wear masks when they're inside places. We are getting some pushback on that. But you know, we're asking people to be smart. And our big challenge is next week, we've had a Bruce Monroe exhibit installed and sitting on our ground for a month and a half now that no one's been able to see. And we've got to get that thing opened. So we're going to open next week and we're trying to figure out how we're going to walk people through the exhibit and not just let them wander through the gardens at night. So that's our challenge right now.
Are you finding that most people are being fairly respectful of the social distancing? And I know that masks are an issue. They're an issue up here too. But for the most part, is it going okay?
Most people are. We've had a few issues with, we also have a zoo and we have baby otters right now. We had triplets born in February, and we happened to be able to put them out on exhibit about 3 weeks ago. And when that happened, we were getting some clustering around the otter exhibit. And we've had to put a staff person down there to keep people apart. We're seeing it mostly with younger people. We've also seen families. In South Carolina, they've said you're not supposed to have a group of more than 3 unless it's a family, but it's supposed to be a family living in the same house. And we had a group that claimed they were a family I think 16. And so we had to just kind of split them apart and they got all upset with us, but it's, you know, we've just got to do what we got to do.
Yeah. Well, there's a few more questions and we have 6 minutes left. So does anyone have a plan for volunteers coming back? Don't see.
We've kept, this is Lauren again, we've kept some volunteers coming in every day again, we've stayed open. So we've had garden strollers and we're asking our volunteers if they're comfortable coming back. If they're not comfortable coming back, then we will work around them. And I do know that for this, when we first opened the Bruce Monroe exhibit, we're planning to use staff and not really volunteers until we really see how it's working.
Sure. When I think too, if you offer volunteers the same, you know, PPE items that you would offer your staff, we have a similar situation because a lot of our volunteers are, you know, in that 60, 70 age group, your age group, and there's concern there. So we as of right now, we do not have a plan. I think we're mostly working with staff, and then we also have unions, so we're working with them. So just trying to figure out who can come back and when. But I think if the safety, I think you're exactly right. If they feel comfortable coming back and you are open, then great. And if not, they can wait.
I don't know. Am I on?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. This is Cynthia. I'm up in the Northwest in Bellevue, Washington. And our governor has a whole phased approach. So today is the first day of phase 1. And so we can't have volunteers on site. We can't be working, the admin people aren't working on site, but we were today able to bring more than just one gardener a day back. So that's great. For volunteers, our plan is that in phase 2, which is a minimum of 3 weeks from now, based on various metrics, that we'll be able to, we're hoping, bring in individual volunteers who can work in either really small groups of maybe 2 or 3, or work in totally alone outside. And then by phase 3, which is another 3 weeks after that, we'd be able to do our more regular work group sizes of 10 to 15. And for the indoor work groups, like we have the Christmas lights display that the people work on every week from March through October. So they're feeling very stressed about being behind. So we're trying to work out if they can come in and pick up like a kit to work on at home, because it'll be really hard to have them, you know, they usually have about 15 people in a very small room working all together. So that's not going to work. But yeah, a lot of it is being guided by our state's plans, but we're working really hard. I actually put out a survey to the volunteers last week, and like 80% were like, yes, 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 we want to come back right now. And like, okay, no, stop, wait. So our concern is more that we make sure that we have safe procedures in place. And as far as PPE and things, that's not, I don't know what the answers are going to be of whether we provide it or what, but yeah, anyway, that's my 2 cents for volunteers.
Thank you.
I have another question. Has anyone used Sign Up Genius for people to sign up for timed visitation? I know we've only got a few minutes left, but I just want to rattle these off. Lauren?
Sign Up Genius is great. That's what we use. We not only use it for volunteers, we also use it for staff when you've got to sign up to be a manager on duty or something for an event. But it's a great thing to use.
Awesome, thank you. What are orgs leaning toward on holding the line for pre-purchase tickets only versus allowing some walk-ins along with pre-purchase?
So I can speak to that a little bit if you're not tired of hearing from me yet. But we have that conversation. So it's difficult because we have members that are not, they don't use computers, they don't have cell phones, they're just, so to push them all online, we didn't think was very fair. We have allotted a certain number for each hour that if, and this is a member, so we're not doing any transactions. We have big signs up that say, do not roll down your window, keep your windows up. So if there is a member that comes through and they did not sign up online, then we have allotted a certain amount of give there. Our gatehouse is very kind of by the book. So if we don't have those 10 spots per hour where people could come in, then we were running into some issues. But that's how we did it. And then anyone after that 10, we honestly just turned them around and said, you have to come a different day or call the membership number and we will help you do an online registration. And then, I mean, we're still figuring it out, but that's what we're doing anyway.
Yeah. And then there's one comment I forgot, I overlooked. For the volunteers, Houston Botanic Garden has reached out to some of their most engaged volunteers and given the volunteers the opportunity to return, but they have to submit a signed letter assuming specific responsibilities related to returning to work during the pandemic, which is interesting. And I see Richard's popping on here. There are 2 other things. Robert Burgess wanted thoughts on office staff coming back to the workplace. And then also somebody was asked, Nina Cunningham asked, is anyone else having a hard time figuring out which category botanic gardens fit in? And Richard and or Pam, maybe you guys can answer this. Have you contacted local officials to assist with getting open? Indiana's governor has a phased in approach where tourist sites are open last, which is June the 14th for them. They're 98% outdoors, very small visitor center and gift shop. So once people are in, the risk is low. So anything along those lines before we wrap it up? I know we're at 4:30, but I didn't want to not say those things.
Yeah, I can weigh in on that one. The gardens are looking at whatever is their jurisdictional regulations that are governing them, and because they're not standardized, it's all over the place. So they got to look at what they've got to work with and see where they can best fit in based on those guidelines or regulations, and then come up with that. Use the template or come up with something like that as a summary to make your case. Keep it short, keep it to the keywords of what's being written in the regs and guidelines. And that's the best approach. And then at least you can start a discussion.
Great, thank you, Pam.
I'm not really involved in that part of it, but do you know, do they go by, like, what is it, NACIS code or SIC codes, or like, just so you know? I'm not sure if the government does that, so you could see if it's listed anywhere, if you have that code, and this is what you need to follow. I haven't looked, so I don't know. But
it depends. Yeah, it depends on the state. I know we're in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania decided to pick and choose from the listings. It wasn't totally standardized, and others are using standards, and then some are just deciding they're going in a different order for perhaps other reasons of why they're letting whoever in open up sooner. So all you can do is check to see what kind of guidelines are being issued, and just work within those phases.
Sure. And then one final question, which is a big one. So we are planning on having another town hall Tuesday, May 19th. And the thoughts on staff coming back to the workplace is that's a huge topic, because we are also preparing with plexiglass and stickers on the ground. And if you need to order PPE, you need to do it now, because chances are it's not going to arrive before you reopen. But like our auxiliary is sewing masks for people. So you just kind of have to see what the expectation is, what you're going to have available. We've closed restrooms. I was on site to do renewals. We closed restrooms. There's only one open for staff, because that's all the maintenance people that we have on site to sanitize it. So it's just a lot of really thoughtful motions you have to go through to reopen. But I would say the biggest thing is going to be that the protection for your staff. Anyone else? I don't know.
No, I think that's a good summary. And maybe Pam, you have thoughts?
Yeah, I was just going to say that a number of gardens are continuing to have anybody who can work remotely, which would include some of the office staff, continue to do so, continue to telecommute, as long as that's an efficient way for them to work, and save that for a later phase. There may be some who are involved with safety, security, other aspects, who really need to be on site in order to roll out the reopening plan. And we are providing further guidance on this and many of the other issues. If you look at our COVID-19 reopening resources webpage, that, as Richard mentioned, should be all stocked up. At least by tomorrow morning, if you take a look. There are a number of resources, an excellent one by the BHS insurance folks who cover a lot of bases, including that one.
Great. Well, thank you guys for being such a great resource. We really appreciate it. It can't be easy.
Mm-hmm.
And anything else before we go?
Good luck with National Public Gardens Week, everyone.
Yeah.